Hello, 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 and welcome in to Bear With Us on the Bear Claw Media Podcast. I am Chris Bolin, joined as always by Ben Schleiger. It's about 8:20 here on Sunday morning. Ben, I'm a little hesitant to ask after that UNC game yesterday, but how you doing, buddy?
Well, I mean, congrats. Both teams had fun, right? Right. Um, Bears fans, wow. I don't know how we don't get a gallon of kosher salt out of our mouth after that one. I wasn't able to watch because Altitude Plus is $200 a year, and no offense, I'm not going to buy that. But I was getting highlights and clips sent to me from all of our adoring fans. Love you guys. Love all the interactions from the CSU and the UNC community. Down here for a wedding, ironically enough, for a couple that we went to the game with last year. So,
One
um,
CSU, one UNC grad
yeah,
in that happy couple, which is a crazy
exactly.
weekend to have this.
Right. I'm like, this is heinous, but it's okay. It's fine. We love the happy couple, even if they make bad choices. But they did have a former Nine News sports caster there that did give off the reading when CSU scored what would be the go ahead and what CSU media will portray as the go ahead score, even though we know the go ahead score got ripped away from us. I think even though I didn't get to see it live, I've looked at different fan posts. I've looked at uh, also media posts from our boy Michael over at KUNC, Troy Rank over at Big Box Media. Looked at all of them. I don't see enough to overturn a touchdown on the field, and I think we should all be salty about it today. And then let's all give Coach Lamb a pat on the back tomorrow. Like, yeah, this is salty. Probably did get robbed. Mountain West probably did give us a screw job, but let's just take a moment to appreciate the Bears were actually in an FBS game, albeit local, albeit in-state rivalry, albeit, CSU possibly on down year. Who cares? We almost won an FBS game.
Yeah, legitimately, and should have won. I think even if you don't want to count that, if you want to set aside that overturned touchdown that Carver Cheeks had, uh, forced 5 turnovers to just UNC ended up with 2, but the second one was that interception on the very last play of the game. So that was just a chuck it ball. But you're right, and I think the most frustrating part of this watching from in the stadium is they didn't show one single replay of it, which if you were listening to me and my boy Jacob or our boy Jacob on Pirate Radio, that was like he even said something like they haven't shown the replay, which really makes me think that he caught it. So he was basically, before they announced it, he's like, they didn't show it, so I'm pretty sure they're going to uphold this as a touchdown, because they showed BFNs like scamper into the end zone about 150 times. Even after they overturned that touchdown, that was the highlight that they went to. So it was just frustrating. And I think the refs like mic communication stopped working somewhere in the second half. So like he couldn't announce it, and like nobody really knew what was going on. And then there was also the penalty. So we were like, well, did it get overturned because of an offensive, like an OPI? And no, but it was and that penalty was stupid too. Like, I get it because he did kind of caught it and then bark something in the defender's face, but and then immediately went down with a cramp, which was kind of hilarious if you watch that video. But it's like they still enforce that penalty after they overturn the catch, which you have to do. Like, I get it, but also there's no taunting call if they don't rule it a catch on the field. And just just a
If the
heartbreaker,
touchdown
man.
doesn't exist, like the penalty shouldn't exist in my mind, but I get it. They're trying to keep end of game tempers at bay, but come on now. Like, I don't think you can have one without the other, so it should have just been retry from where they're already at. But no, and it's frustrating. Like, you guys got one thing of what the call was, and, ESPN on Gamecast had another thing. None of the end of game communications were proper or professional or clear. and I think that's the biggest thing is CSU fans. There's a small ignorant part of the fan base that are like, "Yay, we won the game! Congrats, boys!" Like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're just gonna have those grandmas, patting you on the back. That's fine. But the rest of the fan base is very awakened, and some of them in ways of congratulating us of like, hey, like you guys basically won that, so like congrats little brother. And like other ones are like, hey, is this coach gonna stick around? And I know, I had to leave partway through you're in Bates's conversation, but I know the love is not at an all-time high for coach. So I don't know if this adds to the animosity. If they start having a really down year, do we see a coaching change halfway through for the Rammies?
From a UNC perspective, when it comes to CSU fans and Jay Norvell, all I will say is kind of just be careful. Be careful what you ask for. I know, like that game, they were incredibly sloppy. Like CSU looked unprepared. They looked like I wish I could remember his name so I could give him a shout out. But the CSU color guy, the radio color guy, caught him in the hallway like at halftime when it was 10-0, and he was like, UNC came out or CSU came out looking like they were ready to spar, and UNC came out looking for a title fight. It was similar to the like Alabama Florida State game that Florida State kind of shocked Alabama, and that's been a whole thing in the FBS. But it was very much like just super super sloppy from CSU. UNC forced a couple turnovers. They pressured BFN, but even on that one, it's not like Ekibon got a hand on the ball. He just kind of dropped it as Ekibon was pressuring him. The first punt fumble was nothing. Like the guy just dropped it. There was nobody from UNC even really near him. But then there were a couple that they like really forced. That second punt turnover, it was Mikhail Benner. I want to give him a shout out because he just went and took that ball. Like as he was bringing the punt returner down, he just grabbed the ball and took it from him. And then Sione Tuha recovered a fumble and had a little bit of a running room. He looked stout when he was carrying that ball. I've never really thought of him as a big guy, but he looked it looked like it was what's there's a phrase that I can't think of, but and then what was the last one was the God, I'm blanking on names. The Cam Chapa interception, which just an overthrow. We talked with Bates, like you were mentioning, Ben. Uh, Norvell is very tied to Braden Fowler Nicolosi, and oh boy, did Braden Fowler Nicolosi not look promising last night. He looked like he would have played for UNC in like one game last year. It just was he just looked sloppy and really poor performance across the board. But back to my original point, like careful what you ask for, guys. Like CSU, like I know you're in a better spot than UNC, but you haven't exactly like set the world on fire with your football program. And he did go 8-4 last year. Like I understand the frustration, but maybe just take a step back. Let's see how the rest of the year plays out. Awesome.
CSU, they have a long way to go, especially if this is going to be the new norm. I don't think fans are going to be happy. I don't think they're going to have patience for this type of shenanigans.
Yeah, but as you said kind of a bit ago, very promising from UNC. I with how it got last year, it was almost shout out to Jacob for I think was the first one to say this. It felt good to be able to have our hearts broken because last year it was very apathetic by the end of the year. Abilene, this feels very akin to Abilene Christian, so it'll be interesting to see how UNC's season kind of goes. Like it, granted, last year backup came in. It was Hank. Uh, Played really well in the Abilene Christian game. Almost led him to a win. Didn't quite. Very similar with Eric Gibson Jr. I want to talk about him, but I'm bouncing around a lot. But I think if they can build off of this momentum at South Dakota, who in theory CSU should be better than South Dakota, even if South Dakota is a top 5 FCS program. But it'll be key to see how they react to this because I don't think this is the adversity that killed them last year. It was when Hank went down 3 plays into the next game that really did him in. But I'm excited. I'm excited about UNC football in a way that I haven't been since probably that Abilene Christian game last year.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and especially like South Dakota has underperformed um, in the couple contests that they've had this year. So I don't think it's out of reach for us to keep this momentum and just keep on going with that. So Bears fans should be excited. I think that was a common theme last night that we haven't seen in a while. It's just like there was there was positive stuff online rather than just us. Shout out Tony 303. But yeah, like really, even CSU fans were willing to give us a pat on the back, and that's I don't think that's ever happened. I think it's more so like, oh, thanks for coming, guys. Like, so great we could have you in town and spank you. And now it's like, hey, like you guys beat the crap out of us, and like, sure we got the paper W, but yeah, like ultimately, I think we gained a lot of respect last night. And I didn't get to see the full broadcast and whatnot, but everything I could see from post game, fans were full of animosity. Even even Mayor Gates or former Mayor Gates. No,
No,
I
current
think
Mayor
he's in last
Gates.
term. Last term. Okay.
Yeah.
Last term, Greeley Mayor John Gates. He was on Twitter,
Ooh, I need to
and
check
Facebook,
that one out.
and Steve Smiley. He put out a very professional but also condemning post of like, gut wrenching for the Bears. Should have won that game. Should have been their first W. But like all in all, like congrats to Coach Lamb on getting the team so far. And I think it's a common message we need to keep up. Is even though Shadron wasn't the performance we wanted, Peter went down. Ultimately, it was just kind of a ho hum, offensive day. We had a bit of a ho hum offensive day at CSU, and almost beat them. So like defense and special teams and just being aware of the ball. I didn't see the pretend ESPN listed that Gibson lost a fumble. I don't know if that was a bad snap or whatnot. I'm sure you guys can
No,
tell.
that oh, sorry. No, that was just a very poor play. It was very similar to the BFN fumble. He was stiff arming and didn't get it poked out. He just lost it. And that led directly to CSU's first touchdown because they recovered it and got it back, returned it to about the 12, I think, and then punched it in. But
Right.
sorry, I'll
That's
let you
one of those you
continue.
want back, but it happens. Somebody made a football play. It is what it is. Ultimately, all the highlights I saw from Gibson looked great. So even though we don't have Castelli, I think we're still in hands of a pretty good arm.
Yeah, Ben, you're gonna appreciate what this little soliloquy. I don't even think that's the word, so it's probably not a good sign for the tangent I'm about to go on. But Eric Gibson in every, I don't want to be too harsh in this. He looked like he was QB1 way more than Peter Castelli's ever looked like he was QB1, and not just in the confidence he played with. I feel like I don't know because I'm not in the booth with Walter Scheid, and I don't really know, but it felt like they called the game like they had more confidence in him than they had in Castelli. Granted, they were playing Shadron last week, so they didn't really need to get too deep into the playbook for Castelli. And Eric Gibson really impressed with his composure too. He in on that last drive, the crowd was like bearing down, very loud in that stadium. He was like handling stuff at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if it was like audibling, confirming stuff, but he felt like a field general out there. Made maybe one bad throw the entire game, maybe one or two. There's probably one on that last drive where he was pressured and just kind of chucked it, but other than that, there was like one that he just missed a slant on, and it was almost like so surprising that I was like, wait a minute, did the receiver stop when he was supposed to keep going? Because he just looked in control out there. Obviously, the moment wasn't too big for him coming from LSU, even if he didn't get a ton of run there. And then after I just ran into him very briefly outside the locker room, like after the game ended, And I was just like, you know what, like, great job, man. I'm really, really stoked for what you can do move forward. And he was just like, it's all because of my teammates and my coach or my coaches. And it didn't feel, just like that cliche he was just waiting to say. It felt genuine. And I think I kind of understand what Lamb has talked about with him being that leader, even as a backup quarterback. So Ben, I'm excited about quarterback play at UNC for the first time. Let's not counting Portland State last year because that's a weird one, but this one feels like a sustainable because there's more games left in the season. But a quarter, I'm excited about who's taking snaps for UNC, and it feels like we're actually have a quarterback who can compete at this level.
Yeah, I'm gonna clip all of that. That's fantastic. Said all that. I agree. I think this is all love to Costelli, and hopefully he gets healthy. According to Whole Show, apparently he's gonna try to make a comeback if that's possible this season. I focus on health first. Let's make sure everybody's healthy first. Then we can figure out X's and O's later. But albeit like let's put Caden Box's arm out of the conversation. This is probably the first dangerous arm I would say that we have in the program, besides Jacob Nip. I think we loved Keaton Mott and we loved
I really loved Keaton Mott personally.
yeah, Chris is a big Mott guy for sure. There's definitely some other like fill-ins. It was like, man, cheering for the local guy, but it never really felt like we could just send a laser or get a dart way down the field and have our guy have the better chance at the ball. It always was like, chuck and pray. Let's see what we got, boys. Um, Gibson, his placement is impressing me, especially outside of the numbers, like on the outside hashes, just his drop in. He did it again in the CSU game. He did a little drop in catch to Cheeks. Of course, maybe they just have a fantastic connection there or something. But just watching of course, I think it was Jesus that probably had the footage again. But whoever had the underneath footage of Cheeks catching that and getting pushed out of bounds, and the arc, the placement, the end result of that ball, just fantastic. I think it's a great time for Bears fans because yeah, we do need a. I think we still need to tweak the offensive scheme. I don't think the pass. I think you're right. The pass plays have been evolved with Gibson out there, but I think we need to keep on evolving our passing game. The running game, there was definitely some try out there. Rocco got a score. Keone got a score. Great day for those guys getting our touchdowns on the board. Carver should have had the other touchdown, but I think we just need to continually trying to evolve our passing game because I think our running game is there. I even saw Rams fans saying, "Wow, the Bears' offensive line should not be getting this much success against the Rams' D line." And I think that's a very poignant point because we recruit the best that we can. We try to get the most willing and most skillful guys at UNC. But let's be honest, like sometimes that's not the biggest guy. Sometimes that's not the most impressive guy. And for our guys to be out there, showing up a next year Pac-12 team, I think that's fantastic that we had that type of success. The trenches is not a place that I expected us to have a strong point in last night, and it sounds like across the board, there's definitely some better protections we can do here and there, but across the board, the Bears put up a very respectable performance on O line.
100%. And they weren't really able to open up too many holes in the run game. But that was a lot of CSU's. It wasn't so much the D linemen getting off of their blocks. It was a lot of like linebackers and second level coming up. But they protected Gibson great in the pass game. I think maybe he took one sack in the stat sheet, but it was like if it was registered as a sack, it looked suspiciously like a design QB run. It was like a third down, and he was in shotgun, and he kind of like a draw play, and he just got kind of tripped up. He had some space, but couldn't quite make it through the line. But the O line did in pass protection. They looked great. Like he never was hit in the backfield. Part of that was Gibson did a great job getting the ball out. I think that was part of it was play calling, probably knew like we need to call some shorter, quicker passes. But I agree with you on the play calling, Ben. I'm willing to 1,000% give the offensive staff a free pass for last year because of just the turnover and being on quarterback 4 and 5.
Right.
But this year, like they looked better. I think the Bears' best offensive drive was the second one in the second half after they fumbled the first drive. But the second one, they were aggressive. They were throwing on 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, not just like little swing passes. They were letting him rip it across the middle. He looked good. It looked like they were more effective when they were more aggressive with their play calling. And I understand why at periods throughout the second half they let their foot off the gas because throughout a lot of that, the clock was UNC's best friend. But ultimately, the same thing kind of remains where if you force 5 turnovers, you need to score more than 17 points. Like it's an FBS opponent, so there's a little bit of leeway there, but you can't you can't have 10 points off of 5 turnovers. Like there was a time, I don't think the stats were quite accurate because it said there was a time when UNC had 5 turnovers or had forced 5 and CSU had forced 1, and they both had 7 points off of those. So it's a little bit of a free pass because again, a FBS program in theory, better resources, should be better players. So not moving the ball is more acceptable, I guess is probably the term. But if this is a Big Sky team or an FCS opponent and you turn them over 5 times and lose, that's like almost a disaster. But all that to be said, it's very. I don't want to sound too negative. It's so encouraging what we saw. Like I'm genuinely. It feels like it's trending in the right direction. Which coming into this game, I wasn't sure if that was the case.
Yeah, I think you had a point there. Um, it's just we do need to capitalize on opportunities given to us. I think that Gibson fumble, just ball security, work on that this next week. Um, obviously, work on making the refs understand that it's a touchdown.
We'll
It's
get
not.
back to Missouri Valley football refs aren't. They won't have the fix come in from up top like the Mountain West did.
God, I hope not. That was. Yeah, I'll try to not revisit that, but salt in the wound today for sure. I think the only other thing I might be a little too hard on the play calling, because I guess naturally the progression is you do advance it throughout the season, and you don't want to show everything in non-conference because then conference has tape on it. But at the same time, I still agree. I think your point is the best point of where we could have done better yesterday is just if there's 5 turnovers, we need 3 scores off of that, at least 2. 7 points just isn't going to do it. And ironically, the age-old number that you have to get over is 20 and a half. CSU squeaked by that, getting to that. We would have been at 23, admittedly, if that touchdown counts. So I think we did just enough yesterday, but again, we don't want to be hitting just enough. We want to be hitting clear, solid wins, and I know that's a strange thing for Bears country, but after this result, I think that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know if you quite said it, but I think you kind of meant it. Like they did enough to win in this game. UNC did
Right.
enough to win in this game, and it's a shame that they didn't because it was truly like kind of after watching the replays, I don't have quite the vitriol that I did. I was like convinced because they didn't show a replay for 10 minutes in the stadium and they just left us all hanging. I was fairly convinced that like the fix came in from the Mountain West and they weren't gonna. I even said it on air. They weren't gonna let CSU lose to a Big Sky team that won one game over the past 2 seasons. Seeing that ball kind of at least they had. I'm not saying that's not the case, but with how that ball did move when Cheeks was on his back, they have plausible deniability that I just don't know how they overturned it. Not to rehash that point that everybody's been hashing on Twitter for the past
Yeah, I think
about
we've all
12,
done the
12
high
hours
scrub
now.
replay on our phones and been like, I don't see what they see. And legitimately, I really don't. I feel, not trying to be biased, like I felt like Carver's arm was underneath it the whole
Yeah.
time he made impact with the ground. The only thing that came up of someone even giving some sort of insight was the CSU radio guy saying, "Well, the ball moves when he's on his back," and uh, as far as I remember, he still has the ball when he comes up with it. So even if it moves when it's on him, he still had it. So it didn't touch the ground as far as I can see. At most, there might have been the nose of the ball that might have touched, but being non-biased, just putting on my observer hat from my Twitter highlights that I could get a hold of. I really don't think I don't think there was enough on the field for it to be overturned. Like if it was ruled incomplete and then ruled and then like they were trying to go back and like try to overturn the incomplete, like I guess they could have a hard time because like that nose of the ball might have touched, but you can't play the might have game when you rule it a touchdown. And like it might be there. Now, if you're playing mites, you're not you don't have clear cut evidence like Mike Tirico says. We don't need to scrub it down to the millimeter. We just need does it look in slow motion like like what was called on the field.
Yeah, legitimately, that's the thing is I don't think there's anybody not there are people who earnestly believe it, but it does seem even the CSU media was like whether you want to like say that was definitively a catch or not, like it's crazy that they overturned it, more or less. I've seen a handful of that opinion from the CSU media as well. So it's just and I've it's funny with Dean who hasn't made an appearance. Dean, why haven't you made an appearance on here? But he got a couple Houston Reed questions in. He texted me after, like he sent me a string of texts after they overturned the call, and he was like, "That was a terrible, awful call. Dear Lord, dude, CSU got bailed out. Just let UNC score here, and things will be right." And then he said, as a Rams fan, I think you deserve an apology. And he was watching it on TV. He wasn't in the stadium. So he even got extra angles of the replay that we didn't get.
Right.
So but not to tie a bow because I do want to, sorry, to kind of abruptly stop my thought and go in a different direction. Where the hell did Matthias Price go? Like we missed, he didn't take one snap. We missed Lamb's presser because we were bitching on the post game show probably, and by the time we got down there he was already gone. But that was like one thing I was curious about because that don't get me wrong, Rocco, Justin Gwynn got a lot of carries, which I was personally a fan of. Brandon Johnson maybe looked the most impressive of the backs when he in the limited carries he got, but just didn't see Matthias Price. I don't want to say I hope it's a minor injury, but if it's not, I'm like a little unnerved about the running back room ending up the exact same way it did last year with like nobody really getting nobody getting nobody being happy with the amount of carries they got because everybody got some carries. But I think you can do that with four guys when you add like 5 and 6 like they had last year's where it gets a little hairy.
Yeah, I think that's still a dangerous game to play. If we play the running back carousel, I don't think
And to
that's a
just
good look.
not give him any carries. Like if
Yeah,
he got 5 or 6 and wasn't the featured back, I'd get it. But to like no carries is a little weird. Sorry to cut you off.
no, definitely a weird way to go about it. I mean, like shout out Rocco getting the touchdown, but still, like it's not like we're trying to choose favorites necessarily. I mean, that's kind of is what starters are. But at the same time, like if you just like you work this guy to death the week before and he's not hurt and he's not ineligible for some reason, what's the reason of not having him? Like if it's going to be this whole like just trying to feel out the room type thing, I that's going to make me sick to my stomach. That was kind of what we got last year, and then we got somewhere a few weeks into it, became the based on average of play, based on average of run. We knew that was horseshit because if that was true, Red would have been getting the most carries out of everybody, and he transferred out and ended up nowhere out of that. So I don't want that for any of the guys that are on the roster now. We have a lot of talent, but let's not waste it. Let's not piss them off. Like ultimately, if you have to choose a favorite, choose three and run the heck out of them. You know, the fourth guy, he'll either understand or hit the portal. Um, that's just kind of is what it is. And the third guy can swap out, and you can choose a different third guy every game or something like that. But it's just like you need consistency in your offense. And if we're gonna do this weird hodgepodge, like, well, everything's already going to crap because Peter's down. No, 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 no. Don't freak out. We need we need plans. We need backup plans. We need to be able to adapt and overcome. I mean, as former UNC player and assistant, Hod Soto would say, RIP coach, but adapt and overcome. That was his motto for the nightmare, and that's what we need to do going forward. We can't do this weird. We're not gonna choose somebody to be the featured back. Like if you're choosing it based off of scheme, I kind of get it, but at the same time, your offense, your line, your quarterback. We need consistency. Gibson needs consistency so he can continue to grow, continue to get better at the passing game, and continue to get more confident.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you can get away with 4, and the fact that he got no snaps makes me think something was up beyond just he was relegated, because even Gwynn as the fourth guy got a couple carries last week. But I think you can manage with 4, especially because UNC does a lot of two back sets, and one of those guys will inevitably get hurt in the next 3 weeks. Hopefully nothing serious, but banged up to the point where they miss a game or two, which may have been which might be exactly what Matthias Price had, and we may just be kind of talking in circles. But I
I
agree,
just don't want the
consistent.
carousel to come back. Like I'm
I'm with
fine
you,
like
man.
spreading the love, spreading the rock. That's all good. That's good for, you know, opening up the defense and all that jazz, but like we do need to have a little consistency of like this guy's 1A, this guy's 1B, you're 2, you're 2A or 3 even. You know, we just need there needs to be a set hierarchy a little bit. I think if you don't have that, expectations are all over the place, and you know, we're good enough to scare CSU, but we're not good enough to be playing World War II mind tactics out here trying to be code breakers.
No, 100%, and you're right about the expectations, and it just needs to be consistent. You're right. The carousel last year was frustrating, so I'm not gonna say we're getting there yet, because I do like the way carries have been distributed so far. But the I guess last point, we touched a bit on the defense earlier, but they played great again. The turnovers are a bit fluky. You know, but forcing 6, you're not just going to luck into six turnovers. So great job. We highlighted a couple of those, but also a big 4th-and-1 stop. CSU went for it on 4th down at UNC's like 13 or maybe 15-yard line just before halftime. UNC stopped them, was able to get the ball back, and then actually get the ball back again. But there were things that the defense did that you can carry over, and even in the second half when CSU started to run the ball with a lot of success, it felt like they were never getting gashed. They were getting 4 or 5 yards here, but then they stop them in the backfield once. It's 2nd and 12, and it throws off CSU's whole kind of rhythm on offense. So again, the Lamb said they don't want to be a bend but not break defense. That's not like a strategy, but it's coming through so far, and it's better to be bend but don't break than just breaking immediately, like we've seen, especially last year. 2 years ago, the defense stayed really stout, but the defense this year has been a big highlight. 24 points over 2 weeks, which but it's also down a level then up a level, so you can probably call it with some consistency to what it may look like with 2 FCS games. But we may need them if the offense can't capitalize, but the offense moved the ball in a way that made me encouraged that they can kind of capitalize on some of those moving forward.
Yeah, I liked what I saw out of the defense from the little bit that I could see. Also, kind of looking at the stats and whatnot, it looks like we at least have a common three. It looks like Chappa, Nowatzki, and Dale Bryant Jr. are going to be kind of like our main go-to guys. I think Ezra Ekubon had a huge coming out party as he got the start this week. Over well, I don't know if he got it over McCurry Brim, but I know those guys were sharing snaps last week. So nice to see Ezra get a shine in the spotlight a little bit. I think it was well worth it, and he definitely made his presence known as our top leading tackler, sharing with Nowatzki, and also like Chappa getting an interception. That's awesome. Getting an interception at the FBS level is fantastic, and I think the defense still has some question marks. I'm not sold on the defensive line quite yet, but I think we were always kind of wondering like what that was going to be, how it's going to be. But overall, I like that there's leaders that are emerging themselves after 2 games, with Nowatzki, Bryant, and Chappa really just stepping up. Ekubon might get more of a play into that category as he gets more time and reps, but I think they'll probably play with the defense a little bit more throughout the non-conference. I would say probably if we're treating the non-conference kind of like preseason, we're probably going to see the majority of our starters next week at South Dakota, and then after that, like Houston Christian, they might mix it up again one more time before things get real with conference per se.
Yeah, I think we'll see. It's interesting though, because you're right. It's not quite a preseason because when it comes to like playoffs in theory, which would have been laughable ahead of last night, but when it comes like it does matter. Like you need these wins. But
Right.
you're right. A lot of UNC players down with like weird little injuries last night. They just like a lot of like Carver Cheeks, the cramp on that last play, he jumped up to celebrate, immediately went down, had to be helped off the field. Ekubon a couple times, Daryl Bryant Jr., Fisher Clements. We had like everybody kind of, everybody seemed a little beat up, which, yeah, makes me wonder maybe we won't, I wonder if we maybe won't see a full like cast at USD, but also you're right. This is kind of a ramp up game too, but moving forward to South Dakota, what's going on with them? The big downside to being at doing these radio is I was at CSU for 8 hours yesterday. I was able to watch like almost no other college football after like 1 p.m. But South Dakota lost to Lamar 20-13. Not really sure what to make of that, quite frankly. I don't have the adequate context. Lamar the week before got blown out 51-0 to North Texas. South Dakota coming off a pretty hefty loss to Iowa State, but also that one feels understandable. It's against a top, what's proving to be a very good Iowa State team, honestly. So, what do you? Let me phrase it like this to you, Ben. What would you want to see? What would be considered I don't want to say a win because there's a very definitive stat for that, but like what do you want to see next week to where you're like, okay, I still feel good about where this program's at. Do they need to win, especially with South Dakota on that schneid, or is it kind of a like, maybe if we go in there and we're tough again and it's a close game, then we can carry that momentum? Or where do you kind of fall on all that, Ben?
My expectations for the season shifted immensely when I saw 10-0 Bears at halftime. That was nuts. I shared the hell out of that photo to everybody. Everybody I knew that wasn't busy like you doing the broadcast and whatnot. I was like, look at this. This is wild. The fact that CSU can't score on an FCS defense, like let's belittle ourselves for a little bit. A 1-22, 1-23 team, two okay, 2-23 now because shattering. But let's two wins in basically 3 years. Um, just absolutely nuts that we had them 10-0 at halftime on the hook, and that we led the whole game. We led 59 minutes of a game against an FBS opponent. Absolutely batshit crazy. That should never happen with what we have done in the past historically, and the hodgepodge that we've been working with should have never happened. So now I'm like, great. that kind of resets my whole outlook on the season. The whole 3 to 4 wins that we're talking about seems doable if we stay healthy and consistent. Of course, those are the you know, two biggest opponents that you face besides the opponents that are across the field from you. But I think this should be a win. If Lamb has everybody feeling right, feeling healthy, and um, has noticed what Lamar was able to do against them, I haven't been able to see any of that film. Usually, I would study on Saturday nights for my top 25s and whatnot, but haven't studied flying blind with you right now, but I know the transfers hit them hard. They hit South Dakota State hard, and that really made the Montana State South Dakota State game way more interesting last night. Double overtime, but still the Jackrabbits ran away with it. So I think it's just a matter of they lost a lot of pieces. They're feeling really down right now. We gained theoretically more helpful pieces and have upgraded per se, even though we've lost some key players to other programs and whatnot. I think ultimately we're on an upswing, they're in a downswing. We need to capitalize on that momentum and every little bit of vitriol and disappointment and just absolute saltiness that you have from last night, channel that into practice. Channel that into that bus ride, that plane flight, whatever it is. Channel that
It better be a
when you
plane
get to
flight, Ben, because
campus.
I'm going with them. We better not be on a bus up to Vermilion, South Dakota.
Channel it all the way through all that. You just act like a bull. You see red, you attack red. Just get after it next week. I think there's an open door and the Bears have every chance to walk through it. They just need to do a great game plan like they did this week, force turnovers, and get after it. I think a win is possible. What I would like to see is a competitive game all the way down to the last result. If it's not a win, I'm not gonna be disappointed, but I want to see a competitive game. I think a competitive game is 1,000% within reach, with South Dakota being down and us being wildly up this week. Let's just make sure it's not a 1 week fluke, and then the rest of the season is just garbage in the trash, never win again. I don't want any of that to be on anybody's mindset. I want everybody's mindset to be attack red, get after red this week. Coming into conference, if we win at least one of the next 2 games, which I'm sure Houston Christian is going to be a gettable game still. I still think that is. Just players wise, not even looking at their season, players wise, I think we have a great shot. But if we get one of the next 2, I think we're in a good spot going into conference. 2-2, great spot. 3-1, amazing spot.
Yeah, no, I think next week will be a big test to see if this was just, I don't want to say a fluke, but if this was kind of like that Abilene game and aberration when you look back. Or if I think you're right though, there is a door and UNC needs to take advantage of this momentum. I think just strictly for South Dakota, it may be a better thing that they didn't win, because I think they still, UNC still may have a bit of an edge that I don't think would have been lost, but it would have been harder to carry with you. And you don't have to manufacture any sort of like hard feelings, I guess. It's very, very clear what you want to be mad about and what you want to kind of carry with you. And you can't dwell on it, but channel that, and like you said, take it to practice, take it to Vermilion on Saturday, and just punch him in the mouth. Like this is as probably as feisty as a UNC team's been since really the McCaffrey. They won a couple games, but it feels like really since Ernest Collins, where they had this kind of like weird, could just kind of pop up at any moment and knock someone off type of vibe around them. But it is I'm interested. Almost wish South Dakota would have won a close game, because they're 0-2 now and probably looking like, oh, what the hell are we going to do? But this could be probably, I don't want to say a turning point. I don't want to make too much out of a week 3 game, but I think there's a lot riding on this game for confidence, for momentum, for how the rest of the season plays out. I think it kind of starts here, whether it starts on an upward trajectory or it starts back kind of down. And I don't think a loss necessarily means downward trajectory, but yeah, it has to be a good, competent game. And just like everything you said.
No, I think you're right. I think this is the most meaningful week 3 game that we've had in a while because South Dakota is going to look at us as a get back game. We're going to look at South Dakota as another chance to knock someone off that is ranked way higher than we are. And ultimately, like, it's, similar mindsets. We're trying to get back from um, the the jaws of victory, just being vicious to us, and South Dakota just having terrible, terrible result for highly for expectations that were as high as top 4, top 3 in all of the FCS. So everybody's trying to get back to being on track, and I think it's going to make for a great game. Where the Bears fall in that, I wouldn't be I would be disappointed by a loss, but I'd only be disappointed, like truly disappointed, if it was probably 14 to 17 points of a difference between us. I think Lamar is definitely figured out a lot of stuff down in the Southland. Um, they're a team kind of like how Nichols figured out Incarnate Word. I don't think that there's you know you can't just have a Cam Ward and walk all over everybody nowadays. You have to have competent game planning. So I think Lamar came in with a great game plan. They found some holes and forced Bowman into some uncomfortable opportunities, and that's exactly what we need to do too.
Yeah, and in closing, the last thing I want to say is maybe the coaches do know ball better than us, Ben. UNC getting 17 votes in that coaches poll, or 17. Yeah, I don't know. It's not 17 votes one for one, but 17 points in that coaches poll. And you know what? Maybe it's a bit of home cooking by Barney and the boys, but hey, UNC, I think they showed why they may have got a couple of those votes here last week.
Look, I wouldn't take any votes away from him this week. Like if you're gonna give us a vote for 17-3 over Shadron, you damn well better give us a vote for what should have been 23-21 UNC over CSU. So keep those fake votes up, Coach Barnum. Love Portland State, but yeah, let's keep on
You don't
getting those
you don't
those
love
votes out
Portland
there.
State, Ben. You're lying.
Pete's
But
coffee, baby. Pete's coffee. But no,
uh,
let's keep those votes. Let's keep the love for Bear Country. Um, they did a lot of great things last night, even though we're all salty about the end result. Ultimately, Coach Lamb put him in the right spot to succeed, and they exploited a lot of things CSU should be ashamed of.
yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. And as always, if you like what we're doing, please, 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 I'll even add a fourth please. Like, comment, subscribe, review. Tell your mom to like, comment, subscribe, review. And if you don't like what we're doing, that is at Bear Claw Media. Ben's DMs are always open, and he's looking for a fight, baby. Have a good one.